Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
He just keeps getting younger and younger.
That's right, Reverend Al Sharpton.
Say that younger bit again. Say it.
How you doing, Rev?
I'm great. How you doing?
Blessed, black, and highly favored, man.
All right.
Well, how you been doing during this COVID and pandemic? How's everything been with you, bro?
Everything been good. I mean, luckily I've not had any COVID, and most of my staff around the country has been good. So we've been rolling. If they would just stop killing us, I could stay home. But we had to fight the Ahmaud Arbery case, the case of Daunte Wright, and the George Floyd trial in the middle of the COVID, and do the marches in Washington.
Right.
So we remained active. So I was concerned being out there, but we had to do what we had to do. They didn't stop shooting during COVID, so we didn't stop doing what we had to do.
That's right.
Now you of course you're based out of New York City. There's a lot of crime going on New York right now. How can we get a hold of the crime a little bit and kind of stop these shootings, stop these innocent kids and people getting killed? What do you think?
I mean, I think that we've got to have a balance where we've got to really deal with crime, but at the same time not go overboard where we go back into everybody's a criminal in our community, like Stop and Frisk was. Eric Adams, the new mayor, when I started National Action Network 30 years ago, we had to have 5 people sign for the incorporation. One was a black cop named Eric Adams.
Wow.
So I've known Eric a long time. He's been in the House of Justice, our headquarters in Harlem, 5 times since he was elected. And I've said to him, I've got concerns that we don't go overboard because they're talking about bringing back the plainclothes policemen. So that where they're throwing everybody up against the wall like you're a suspect. But at the same time, we cannot on the ground not be concerned with all these murders and looting going on. So there's got to be community policing. You've got to make the community work with the precincts. You got to get rid of these cops that are not conducive to that. One of the things is you ought to force the police in New York to live in New York.
So right now they don't. I thought they had to live in no?
You need to have police live in the city. You need to have them in their precincts work with the community groups. And I'm not talking about the funded groups. I'm talking about the grassroots groups on the ground, because people can talk to people that can relate to people. And I think that some of the community groups, those of us like National Action Network that fight police brutality, have got to say we've got to work with people that are responsive to us around this crime issue. I don't want to be mugged. I don't want to be robbed. I don't want to be killed by a cop or somebody in our community that's criminal. The other thing we got to deal with is this mental health situation.
That's right.
The one thing that COVID showed is that something you've been championing, there's a lot of mental health issues, and it's not caused by people. You never saw the amount of mental health people in the streets until COVID. And I think that there's been no real announcement on how we're going to really go and deal with that. I think that is a problem. If somebody stands on a platform at a subway and pushes somebody in front of a train, that's a mental problem. That's not a criminal problem. And you need to doctor that, not just lock it up. When you lock it up, if you let it out in 5 months or 5 years, they've still got a problem.
That's right. What you're discussing is, things I'm very concerned about, because it does feel like we're going back to the 94 crime bill days. And, with Biden in office, he's a tougher on crime president. I can see that happening.
I marched on Biden and Clinton in 94 about the crime bill. And most of the civil rights community at that time, Charlamagne, was against me. Many of the Congressional Black Caucus members. And I said, wait a minute, y'all are going to lock us up. They had mandatory jail time if you were caught with 2 vials of crack. But you had discretionary time if you had cocaine. I said, well, that's only going to hit us at the bottom. You can't have crack without cocaine.
That's right.
Why aren't y'all hitting the big distributors and all? A half generation of us went to jail for mandatory time under that. Biden was who helped usher it through for Bill Clinton. And people talk about, you can't march against the Democrats. I said, watch me. And we did. And later, I'll give credit, Biden did come to National Action Network about 3 years ago and admitted he was wrong. But, I mean, that's after people had done 20, 30 years.
Right.
So my concern, and I've said this to Eric Adams, and I say this to the Black Caucus now, is that you've got Biden in now who had done that in the past. I do not want to see them revert back. He has said he will not, But if these cities start pushing him
That's right.
and all this politics, where are we going with this?
How do you think that they're doing, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
I think Biden got a tough hand with a 50-50 Senate. And I think that I wish that he would have put voting rights bill ahead of the infrastructure bill. He used his capital on the infrastructure bill. We didn't get the voting rights bill. And I think they're going to have a challenge in the midterm elections because we voted for Biden around voting rights and George Floyd Policing Act, police brutality.
That's right.
We've got nothing from them.
That's right.
And we've got to deal with, it's good. Infrastructure is good. I give him credit on that. Some of the things are good. He's not Donald Trump. But the things that we wanted, we've not gotten, and we don't see a clear path. They need to make it clear how we do that. In terms of Kamala Harris, a vice president, if she goes too far out there, you're overshadowing the president. If you don't go far enough, what are you doing? So she's in a very precarious position.
Wow. You know, you got the new book, Civil Rights Activist and Author, this Righteous Troublemakers, Untold Stories of the Social Justice Movement in America. What is the book about?
I wanted to come out, especially during Black History Month, because growing up in the movement in the North, it occurred to me there were people that I didn't know about, and clearly the public didn't know about, that made real changes, and they played them off to the side. And what happened was last year when we had the big march on Washington around George Floyd and the cases, we had over 200,000 people in the middle of a pandemic, and we're walking to the stage, to the steps where we're going to speak right where Dr. King spoke, Martin Luther King III, and me, families of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Aubrey, all of them were there. And there was this old man in the crowd jumping up and down with something in his hand. And the security guys around me just kept us moving. I said, wait a minute, what is that old man doing? And they said, well, keep moving, Reverend. I said, no, get that old man. And they brought him over to me. And he said, he looked like he was in his 80s. He said, Reverend, this is a button. And they read the button, March on Washington, 63.
Wow.
He said, I was here in 63 with Dr. King, and I wanted to be here with you today. And he just went back in the crowd.
Wow.
A couple of 100,000 people.
Wow.
And I thought about it. It haunted me for a while. I said, how many people that knew they were not going to be in the newspaper in the morning, they knew they were not going to be interviewed on TV tonight, these are the people who take their money for unrecognized reasons and made the movement work. And I wanted to profile them. Most people don't know there was a black woman arrested for refusing to give up her seat in the front of the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, 9 months before Rosa Parks. They didn't make a rally around her, make a symbol out of her, because they said she was too dark-skinned and she was pregnant and not married.
Wow.
I
What was
write
her
about
name?
her. There was an attorney named Paulie Murray who wrote a lot of the legal work that Thurgood Marshall used in the historic Brown versus the Board of Education Supreme Court case. They would not pump her up, blow her up, as we would say, because she was a woman and gay. So I wanted to write a book about, look, these people paid dues. These people made it possible for us to get where we are, and they didn't get no limelight. And I figured, well, I have some shine on me. I wanted to shine it on those that I know. I know down through the years, if I had called marches and nobody came, I'm just a guy going for a walk. So it's time to sometimes say, it's time for sometimes to say, wait a minute, you know these people back here are sacrificing. I'm going to get a little profile. But they ain't getting nothing. They're the real champions of the movement.
Absolutely.
You know, you talked about the 80-year-old man who came to your march, and, you know, you're an OG, Rev. So why don't I feel like I don't see the older and younger generations of leaders working together more. Not just folks that's already on your team, but like, you know, the Tamika Mallorys, the Kimberly Johnsons.
I think a lot of it
Kimberly
is,
Jones, I'm sorry.
I think a lot of it is that everybody wants to make their brand, make their name. And I think you got to give them space. I came up, generation ahead of me was John Lewis and Jesse Jackson and them. I wanted to make my own bone. So I don't interfere with that. But I think that what has to happen is those that have traditional organizations like ours need to be working with the young people in our organization, because some of them come out of our organization. And there should be a bond in there. I think a lot of them feel, well, if I'm too much around Sharpton or the head of NACP, is going to overwhelm me. They need to get their own brand, but work with other people, because the movement going to have to be continued beyond us. I don't care who we are. we ain't going to last forever. And I think you're right. We've got to have that continuity of struggle. Like right now, they got all kind of stuff out there against Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. And I talked to some of them and said, wait a minute, we need to know what's real, what's not real, so we can stand together. I remember when about 20 years ago, press was on me about something, and Reverend Jackson called me, who was, like a mentor to me, but we hadn't been talking. And he said, Al, I keep telling you that an oak tree can only be covered in the forest by another oak tree. A bush can't cover it because it's not tall enough. Oak trees need to cover oak trees.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of maturity we need from both the young and the old. The old can't hold on too long, and the young can't act like they just invented the wheel. We all got to try to find a way to do it.
What's the Bible say? Old folks for counsel, young folks for war, right?
That's right.
So,
exactly right.
So, I mean, it sounds like you open to giving that counsel.
I'm open to give that counsel, but they need to want the counsel. I don't need to impose it. But I'm saying whether I give the counsel or not, they ought to be working together. And I can counsel through our young people. Tyleek McMillan, I got a 25-year-old youth leader that's great. I think all of us need to do what we got to do. And it's not only in the movement, it's in hip-hop. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was talking to a young sister at our youth. We have a group that we call Huddle that our young people meet every week. So I don't go every week, but I was in my office one night, and I said, let me show you some stuff. I'm going to impress her. She was 15, 16. And I said, here's a picture with me and Puffy, and here's a picture with me and this one. And I did Michael Jackson's funeral. She said, oh, do you know any young artists? And I'm like, oh, okay. But to them, guys 50 years old are OGs.
Somebody just told us something earlier that just made us feel dumb.
Made you hype.
He's like, y'all were born in the 1900s.
Yeah.
We were, though.
Yeah.
But I was like, that just make it sound like we was born a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I was going to ask, with everything going on, I just wanted your opinion on some of the things. I want to start off with Whoopi Goldberg.
I mean, what
are your thoughts on that?
All right, first of all, there's no doubt Hitler went after the Jews as a race.
Absolutely.
Because he went for the white supremacist, white Aryan. It was based on race. There are the debates about whether it's race or religion. But the challenge that you had is the Holocaust was based on race, about an Aryan nation.
That's right.
Now, the question becomes, for me, in this cancel culture, is how you can suspend Whoopi, but you got all kind of maturations around Joe Rogan.
I was going to ask you about that
so
after.
So what's the standard here?
You feel like
I think it's based on company. I think it's the company you work for.
I think it's the company, and I think it's whether or not you can put public pressure. ABC is different in terms of the corporate lineup than Spotify is.
What do you think about what Joe Rogan said, and do you think more should have happened?
I think, again, it's the company's got to deal with it. I think the fact that the company's losing a lot of people, if they're going to choose him over them, then we know who they are. And I think, somebody asked me, TMZ, are you calling on them to fire him? Are you going after him like years ago you went after Imus? I said they may want us to do that. We've got to be strategic. We knew the vulnerability of CBS and NBC. Spotify is a different structure. Like right now, we had jumped on NFL, and we had a meeting the other day with Goodell. You've got advertisers. You've got public finance that NFL has to deal with. Where's your nerve point with Spotify? Those go back to counseling. Those of us that's been in this a while need to always tell people you got to pick the fights you can win, and not all motion ain't movement.
Now let's talk about the NFL. You said you had a meeting with Goodell?
We had a Zoom meeting. I wrote him a letter Friday, asked for a meeting, and on Monday, Mark Morial of the Urban League, Derek Johnson, the NACP, Reverend Barbara Skinner, and Melody Campbell and I had a meeting. And we told him the Rooney Rule is out the window. It's not worked. When you look at the Belichick text message that he sent to the wrong Brian rather than Brian Flores, he was sending it to the white Brian. He was sending it to Brian Flores. It shows that they were just going through the motions, act like we interviewed a black, and let it go. So you need to get rid of the Rooney Rule. We need rules that not rules necessarily, but we need timetable, target dates, achievements, assessments, hard calendar. Anything other than that is unacceptable. I said, now let me tell you this, Commissioner Goodell. This is not just about jumping up and down outside the stadium, which I've done. This is about all of your 32 teams get public financing. People don't understand the taxpayers are paid for these stadiums to be built. The taxpayers are paying a lot of tax abatements. We'll go into these city councils in these cities and have them vote because no city councilman is going to get up there and vote against us on saying the NFL has 32 teams, never had a black winner, a black owner rather. 32 teams now only have 2 black coaches. So we can go the public route and we can tell your advertisers that if they advertise with you next Super Bowl, you got a problem with us. Let's sit down and talk. He said that we're going to have concrete meetings. I don't want, first of all, I don't want Brian Flores to be the next Colin Kaepernick. I think too many just walked over Kaepernick and didn't deal with the reality of that nothing should have went forward until that man has his job back. We don't want that to happen to Brian Flores. And secondly, I think that we've got to go through, if it's a year marker or 6-month marker, when do we see ownership? When do we see the amount of black coaches increase? Is
it legal to say, look, y'all have to have a mandatory amount of black coaches in the NFL?
It's legal. It's not legal if you say the number.
Okay.
It is legal to say that it has to be more diverse. Mm-hmm. And a city council can say there's not enough diversity for us to give public funds. They don't have to give a number. Mm-hmm. Just say we can't invest public funds in an entity that historically has not shown diversity.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to something you were saying about cancel culture. Do you think we have enough conversations around how culture and society change? Because one of my favorite books is Dr. Peniel Joseph, The Sword and the Shield. But if you read about Martin Luther King Jr. back then, and just, he didn't want women to lead the movement, wouldn't let women speak, at rallies, things like that. Like, people would call that misogynistic. They would call it sexist. They would say, he was terrible to his wife. So in this era, they probably would want to cancel him.
Yeah.
So it's like, shouldn't people be allowed to grow and evolve, and shouldn't we have discussions about how culture has changed?
If we're going to be honest, all of us has grown and evolved.
That's right.
And I think that we've got to be able to correct people without canceling them. I mean, who among us would not be canceled for anything?
That's right.
And I think that sometimes we have taken it too far. I think, yes, some people ought to be totally dismissed if they do an overt act that is against the interests of the public. But if you're evolving and misspeak, if you're evolving and do something inadvertently that was not hate-filled, you can evolve. You sit down and talk about that. And I think that they've used this in a way that I think is dangerous.
I was going to ask with President Joe Biden, right, and he with him asking for all these different things when he was on his campaign trail, and he promised all these different things, and the fact that he's not doing that, where do we go as a people?
I think the issue we're going to have is during the midterms is that if we vote a new Senate in and if we vote a new House in, it gives him more to work with. Now, whether we are pro-Biden or not, he's going to be there another 2 years. Mm-hmm. His reason that he can't do a lot now is only 50-50. Well, if he gets more senators, then you have no excuse. If you get more congressmen, you have no excuse, which is why it is vital that we get past these voting impediments that they're putting up. The Republicans had a long plan. They said that we are going to take the federal courts and the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. They just decided that they were not going to turn over the Alabama voting restrictions. Why? Because Donald Trump, with all of his imbecilic kind of actions, put 3 people on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So you can say what you want. That's why I'm saying we all got to sit down and deal with strategy. And you mentioned a great book with Peniel, is that there always has got to be people that do things differently, but we've got to be going the same place. And I think that we have got to say, if we deliver Georgia, if we deliver North Carolina, if we deliver this, we expect this, that, or the other. And y'all got 2 years to do it, or you're going to suffer in 24. We certainly can't go back and support people that are just outright or saying that Trump won the election.
So why do you think? I was going to ask, what are your thoughts? Yesterday it was all over social media. You're on social media about the crack pipe bill. That the president's going to be giving away crack pipes and this and that. What were your thoughts on that bill that he passed yesterday, and the fact that he's given that bill where it's talking about helping black people?
I mean, I think, again, are you trying to personify us with crack pipe? It just gives me
That's what it felt like.
Yeah. It just gives me an eerie feeling of going back to 94. And I don't want to go back there. And I think that if we start accepting that in conversation, it will then materialize in the legal community, and that's dangerous.
Well, it also, too, it was the grant, and the grant is for what the provision of smoking kits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To help, what do they call it? The safe. It's basically like safe drug use to make sure they don't spread diseases with needles and things like that.
But the language and the way they spin it, I think can give the wrong kind of inference.
Why do you think there's not more of an uproar over the fact that our voting rights are being taken away?
I don't understand it. I mean, we are sitting around and they stripping us one right after another. And I think that we've got to. It's funny. I was in Miami over the weekend for the anniversary of Trayvon Martin, and I was telling the crowd at the dinner. I said, we cannot get into just going for what is trendy and not deal with the solid issues. There's nothing more solid about the voting thing. Everything you do, I meet people all the time, not just young people, old people. I'm not into politics. Yes, you are. The clothes that you wear was approved through some agency that said that apparel's approval. The food you eat, FDA had to approve it. Everything is political. The question is whether you have enough self-respect that you're going to say, I'm going to decide who's going to make decisions on my life. I was riding around many years ago with a brother who was from a different part of the movement than me, but we were friends. And we was riding in Atlanta, Georgia. And he said to me, you know, Red Mal, I don't follow no rules like y'all, no legislation like y'all. I just do my own thing. I'm black, 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 black. I said, then why did you just stop for that red light? And he looked at me and laughed. I said, you follow what is going to protect you.
That's right.
Yeah. The man that put that red light there gave you regulations. So let's quit playing with ourselves and get down to some real basics.
When you wake up every morning, how do you decide what's on the agenda for today? With so much going on, we just named a bunch, right? But then, you know, we're still fighting for housing,
right.
And the fact that they're not giving us loans, and the fact that the areas that we live in are praised a lot lower than other areas. We're still fighting for cannabis, and the fact that a lot of us been arrested and locked up
right.
and spent years in prison, but not too many of us own dispensaries, not too many own licenses. How do you decide what's the fight of the day, or what's the, you know what I mean? Because there's so much going on.
You gotta do what I have a staff of 51 nationwide, regional offices in 6 cities. You got to deal with our basic thrust in National Action Network has been dealing with racial violence and voting rights. That's why Mark Morial and I work together in NAACP and like what they call the traditional organizations. Everybody takes the area they have expertise in because you can't be all over the place. So if it comes up with a police shooting or a racial killing like Aubrey, they defer to me because National Action Network has the staff to do that. I do that and all that. If it's something about economic development, I defer to Mark Morial. The way I always like to say it is one year I spoke at NAN's convention and said we got to be like geese. If you watch geese fly, there's one goose out front, and he's flanked by everybody else, and they go. The one out front takes all of the hits, all of the gnats, all of the wind first, and he takes it as long as he can, then he folds back in, and another geese come in. We got to at least have geese sense.
Wow, at least have geese sense. That's real.
Sense. Absolutely.
Well, listen, man, righteous troublemakers, untold stories of the social justice movement in America from the Reverend Al Sharpton is available right now.
That's right.
Thank you for coming, brother.
Thank you for having me. Always good to see y'all.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, it's Reverend Al Sharpton. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.